all the silly details. So this is commonplace book, commonplace binder. I'm going to set this down now. Build an evolving book of wisdom. So that's what the commonplace book is, and I guess that's what the commonplace binder is. So commonplace binder doesn't exist. This is a 100 video playlist on me making something very similar to a commonplace book. The main difference is, well, it's in rings. So the stuff moves around, which means the page numbers don't exist, which means the index doesn't exist. And so instead of an index and page numbers, I use a content section. So we are almost all the way done with 100 videos, which is very exciting. I'm going to go through these one column at a time. That is this video, that's next video. Let's get to it. So, all the silly details. You're just going to write down whatever you want about whatever. And yeah, that sounds extremely vague, and that's because it is. So, if you want to write down that you need to buy a lamp, then write that down. Because this sort of thing can be a to-do list. Now, you might also break the to-do list into things to do and things to get, but, you know, that's not really relevant. You just write down whatever made you happy, whatever made you sad, and some people will say, that's not a commonplace book, that's more of a journal. And here's the thing, if you don't start with a journal, if you don't start with a planner, if you don't have anything paper, you just need to start writing. And so if you don't even have a single sheet of paper that has writing on it, well, it's a lot better to write about the wrong thing than it is to write about nothing at all. Best for you. Remember, it is whatever works for you. And if you don't know what that is, you can just write down whatever. Ruminate on the data. So one of the main things that people do is they write down quotes. So it's kind of a stretch to say you're collecting the data of the quotes, or you're going to collect data on the quotes. But one thing I did at the very beginning was I would write down population numbers, because the population numbers would change for different countries, and I thought it was interesting to, know how many people there were in Egypt, because sometimes the numbers for certain countries change all the time, and it's not necessarily that everybody was born or everybody died, or moved to one place or the other. But sometimes the data collection wasn't done very well. And so if you collect your own data, you're probably going to run into the same problems. Some of the data will be collected very well, and other stuff will not be collected so well. And so even if you have the best idea from somewhere, if you don't know where it is, that might be a problem later on. Seeing the bigger picture. Having more data is also pretty good when it comes to seeing the bigger picture, although sometimes people can get stuck in the weeds. For example, I have a lot of stuff written on paper, and I don't necessarily always check it. In fact, I rarely check it, because the thing I'm focused on is making this set of videos. And so I normally only use my demonstration binder to figure out how to write more scripts and make more videos. And so most of my system has been fairly irrelevant for the last year, which is not really a great thing to admit, but I would prefer to be honest with you than just say, oh, it's magic. Examples of your work. Well, this is an example of my work. So even if somebody was convinced that all the videos were done by like an AI or something, which I think would be very silly considering how unusual this hair is, I have some proof of my work, like actual physical proof. And so one of the benefits of having this in a binder instead of in a book is I can print the stuff out and put it inside and then edit it again. And so that way I won't just have physical proof, but also have digital proof. Although I think the videos do a pretty good job of the digital proof. A book of ancillary skills? Is that how you pronounce that? It's been a while since I was at finishing school. No, yeah. I don't think the average person uses that word in their daily life. But maybe that's the thing you want. Maybe you want to know all the fancy words. One of the things I've been thinking about doing recently is getting a dictionary, because I've been getting a little tired of having to use the dictionary definitions on Google, because, they're not the definitions I grew up with for every single word, and while the definitions are slightly different, it is somewhat frustrating to feel like my entire language is controlled by one company, and, I enjoy their products, but it's also a little weird to get all the information from one place. Intellectual bomb shelter. So if I had started collecting dictionaries, I might have a whole bunch of information that I could refer to rather than just whatever is recommended to me. And while it's great to have algorithms and it's great to have stored information, it feels a little annoying to have to save such a vast sum of knowledge individually. And it kind of feels like maybe we should have more of a collective system of storing information. And so one of the main ways that people have done that historically is they've created libraries. So instead of one person having a book, 100 people would have access to one book. Not necessarily all at the same time, but it was a little bit easier. And so one of the things I will be talking about next year, which is part of the reason why I've been making this playlist, is I will talk about how the commonplace binder should be in schools, because we don't necessarily have information that is always with us. So if there's a student whose parents get divorced and they don't necessarily have access to everything at each house, they will probably be behind. If there's a student who lives with both their parents and all their siblings and maybe some aunts and uncles and grandparents, and everybody's in one house, well, if that house gets flooded, again, they don't have any information. So it might be good for people to hold on to some of their information in a place where they can actually access it at all times, that the school will back up for them. And so even if it feels like they lost everything, they haven't actually lost everything. And, if we have the students pass on their books to incoming students, then those students will have 2 years worth of information, or 3 years worth of information, or 100 years worth of information, depending on how long the book has been circulating through the system. Side project. If this is not part of a regular class, a lot of students are going to treat it as a side project, and so they're probably not going to do anything with it. And that is why I will also be talking about how we should probably, have someone help the student out with the project and have it actually affect their grade in some way. And so this isn't just going to be some extra requirement for finishing high school, because those are really annoying, and it's just like another way to hold people back. I think it would be a lot better to add on another program, and next year I will be talking about that as the advocate program, but that's for next year, so we're not going to talk about that today. Now it's my turn to do what? Oh yeah, to have an evolving book of wisdom. Look at this, look at that. Yeah, so you might not consider this an evolving book of wisdom, but considering it's more of a living document than a commonplace book, because it's binder, and so the stuff can go in and come out, it should evolve faster than a book where all the stuff is stuck. Like, it doesn't go anywhere. Like, that's kind of the point. Enjoying the tools. I used to enjoy this sort of thing a lot more before I let it sit forever and it filled with dust. So if you have a paper-based system, make sure to clean your space, clear out all the dust, and actually use it, because otherwise the paper is going to degrade and it's going to be a less than ideal situation. A less digital life. One of the absolutely fantastic things about having a bunch of stuff on paper is I don't have to do everything digitally, which is also quite nice when the power goes out, because it's like, what do I do? Oh no. It's like, I just work on my paper system. Easy. Staying sane. Okay, so sometimes people say some absolutely crazy stuff, and people will get a little upset about that, and they'll have to share it with somebody else or write it down somewhere and just not have to worry about it. And a commonplace book isn't necessarily made for that. That's more of a journaling thing. But if you want to write down some of your personal stuff in a commonplace, that's fine. I'm not going to push for a commonplace journal or a commonplace diary. But if you want your thing to be more like that, that's okay. Because this is a personal thing. Filled with joy. So maybe you don't like thinking about all the upsetting thoughts, and maybe it's like, I don't need to know about geopolitics, I don't need to know about the stock market, I don't need to know about politicians. We are just going to relax, and we're going to talk about sunshine and rainbows, and it's going to be great. I saw a great tree today. I saw a hawk. What about that? I could write about that. Challenging the assumption. So I am challenging the assumption of a commonplace book being the evolving book of wisdom by saying that it's actually a commonplace binder. And that's not really a big thing, but if we go back to this thing from earlier, where the student would pass on their book to another student, if you do that through students or through simply generations of a family, even if it's loaded with propaganda, the propaganda is probably going to be based on specific generations. So you will challenge a lot of assumptions if the people base everything on their book, because people are going to put different things in there, and what we consider the truth changes just as reality changes over time. So it might get interesting if you write this stuff down and look at it later. Noise reduction. Yeah, if it's really noisy, I can't really get work done. I also can't really record. Like if there's a train in the background, or a lawnmower, or right now in my case, the air conditioner is off because I don't want it to make too much noise for the video. Yeah, you're gonna want some noise reduction. It would be great to live in a place where it's super quiet all the time, but you know, that's not my life, and I don't think that's the life of most people. It'd be nice though. What I've noticed a lot of things, and I've written them down, and I haven't necessarily reviewed them, and it would be good to do that. But this year is all about generating information, and so it's not really about like actually looking through the old information. Normally for commonplace book videos, it tends to be more like past focused. People don't spend a lot of time focusing on the future, so I think this playlist should be a little interesting in that way. But you know, it's however you want to do it, which is why it's an emotional journey. One of the things that made me very emotional while working on this project, and it doesn't make me as emotional anymore because I'm used to the process, but at the beginning, when I would go through my work and it'd be like 5 years old, like imagine looking at your writing from 5 years ago. It's probably not gonna look great. And so at the beginning, it was a little bit stressful to see how bad my stuff was, and I was like, no, you just need to think about this differently. It was bad, and now it's good, which means you've made so much progress, and you're doing great. But yeah, it was a very emotional journey, and so looking back through my old stuff at the very beginning was very stressful. Now it's not as much of a problem because, you know, I learned to write a lot better than I had before, and yeah, the quality and quantity is just much higher. Personal knowledge. So you're not writing down all of Wikipedia. I mean, if you want to, I guess, but I feel like someone might get upset about that, and I don't know if that would really be possible. I think you'd probably have to use a specific program to download all of it after like compressing it or something, and then you'd have to figure out how to decompress it, and I don't know. I'm not the computer guy. I do use them a lot, but I'm not the computer guy. Where are we? How? So how do you build an evolving wisdom? No? How do you build an evolving book of wisdom? Well, if you make a mistake like the one I just did, maybe you could fix that up and add that in there. Be like, I need to focus on speaking clearly. No, really, you just put one page in after the other, and you write down stuff on each page, and you edit the stuff, and you'll get there. I mean, how else is it going to work? Like, you just kind of have to do the thing. Build. Yeah, so that's where I got the title from. I think that's pretty good. I'm curious to see how this title works. Build an evolving book of wisdom. Like, an evolving book, I think, might get some people, and then book of wisdom might also get some people. But I don't think, you know, build of wisdom is really going to grab people. So I'm really curious to see how this goes. Whatever you build should probably be for you, which is one of the really trippy things about this playlist, because I was making something explicitly personal just for me, and now I'm trying to make something explicitly public, not for me. So it's been a bit of a challenge. It's been quite interesting. I do have the flip-through video coming up. I'm not really sure how I'm going to record that one because I had note cards prepped for that, and I think I'm going to have to toss those or push them off to the side while I just record a normal flip-through video. And so for that, instead of recording like this, I'm going to have to like change where the camera is, and instead of the stand, you know, I'm going to have to use the gooseneck, which I'll just hold the camera in here, and then I'll have to position that properly. But that's, in a few videos. So, hopefully this video captured your mind. No, the next video is going to be something related to captured your mind, but I think that's about selection. So if you want to know more about that, as always, check the next video, and thank you for watching. Goodbye.